What's up? Welcome. This is the Top 200 podcast, the Monday morning meeting. I am Herschel Fruin, High School Top 200. This has been a pretty stacked weekend. I shouldn't say stacked. It's not really stacked. It's more like an important weekend, right? Just because of the games that were on. Obviously, with the two semi-finals of the UC Championship and the Super 8, I think that was a pretty good depiction of who the form teams were, especially for the Super 8, who, even though I had Palmy as a really dangerous team, um, I kind of think that they just weren't the informed team. Even though I think that they had a team to do it, they just weren't the informed team, and it showed. And it showed with Rotorua and Napier being that good, as well as New Plymouth Boys, even though they blundered the game last week against Gizzy. It was still that they were still an informed team, and they were, to me, probably the second best team, even though they lost to Rotorua Boys yesterday. And even when you look at kind of the UC Championship as well, is that Rangiora to me was the second best team, second to Christchurch Boys in that competition. And I think that Rangiora had maybe the best run up to the playoffs than any other team. And just the way that they were playing was so good and so so controlled, and everyone knew that the game plan worked, and they were winning games to me because of that. Everyone believed in the game plan. Everyone believed in the team. Everyone believed that that they have a team this year, and they do. Like, especially with that front row that they have. I think is probably the main base of that team is that front row, and the way that I think the way that they conduct themselves together as a group, as a front row, I think that is what the main difference is whenever they come into games. And I knew who they were even last year, and I wasn't sure which ones were coming back, but I knew who they were. I just didn't know how good they were going to be this year. I kind of overlooked it, and obviously it's my fault that I overlooked them, and I wasn't so much not giving them the credit, but at the same time, I just didn't think they were going to be that good, like the way that they were this year, and even as a whole, um, James Mullen to me, even because I mean, and I'll get to this soon because everyone wants to really know what my thoughts are on my selections of New Zealand secondary schools and barbarians, or their select 50 that they're going to choose. Um, but James Mullen to me was maybe the guy that I was really trying to fit him in there. I think if they chose more than 50 players, um, I would put him in there. And the thing is that he may even make the team. He may even still make that top 50 team. Like That's not up to me. I don't choose that select 50 that they're going with. Those are just the guys that I like. Not It's not the official team. The official team comes out, and I'll make sure everyone knows it's the official team. That's why on my list I said it like 7 times that this is just mine. It's not the official one. Both James Mullen and Harris McRobbie and even Charlie Barrett. I think those three are the ones that really um, set the tone for that team, and they are the ones that I think that if they don't have a good game, the team kind of struggles. And I think it's evident that they have been consistently good throughout the whole year, or this part of this COVID year, that they've been able to win so many games, and it's because of them. And I saw it early on, but I just thought, oh, maybe it might fizzle out a bit, but they just haven't. They've just been that consistently good. And like I said, I'm not the one that chooses that select 50. I just put out my opinion on who I would pick. But if anyone, I think James Mullen will probably be the one that makes it from that front row. And I want to apologize to Charlie Barrett as well, because I left girl like because I was doing it so late, and I wasn't calling him a girl. That's not Charlie. That's not what I was saying. Like, I had paste and cut all these names, and then I had the girls' names after his name, and then when I cut it, and I didn't cut that part out of it, and then tired eyes, and I didn't see it, and so I'm just saying sorry to you, just so that you know. I'm just saying sorry. I wasn't trying to call you a girl or anything like that, but I know how it looked, and it was really bad, and so that's why I'm apologizing to you, just so that you know. Um, the other guys that I like is Andrew Prane. I do like Jack and Will Riley. I like those two as well. Um, Mavia Robati and Caleb McCabe. Those two year 12s at halfback and first five, to me, because they're going to have a pretty young team next year, are the guys that they're going to have to really rely on to take over this team. And they are good enough. They are good enough. I just don't know what those guys have coming up in their ranks. Like, I know that they had a pretty good under 15s this year. Um, but I mean, because an academy there right now, or some sort of an academy there where it has actually shown in the last maybe 4 years how good they are. And I think even myself, I have to start realizing that um, they're not a small time program anymore, and they are a lot more consistent than what everybody thinks they are. And so I kind of got to start looking at them like that. Obviously, Tama Nicholas and even Eloni Fumavaka as well in that backline are pretty special players, and have been pretty consistent. And so even that game against Christchurch boys, um, I think it was a hard loss. Like, I think it was a hard loss, but then you can't really. I mean, like, because the Christchurch boys, even though to me they started pretty slow, had some injuries, kind of took a little bit long to find their strongest pack, but then finally found it and made it work. That's kind of how I saw it, and kind of what I was looking at in terms of how consistent they were going to be, and even in this run of the playoffs. And um, Christchurch is playing better than St Andrews right now, and so it's not going to be a surprise if Christchurch is the strongest one and they win next week. And because even in that St Andrews game against St Bede's, it was kind of a um, I don't know how to say it, and like it was kind of. I thought it was a slow game for both teams, both Stack and Bede's, but I think Saint Andrews was the best on the day. And in such a game, in such a close game like that, with 18-14, and usually when you have games like that, it is really just a battle, and the mistakes, every mistake is like a game costing mistake. And that's kind of how it felt in that St. Andrews and St. Bede's game. Pretty much the whole way through, it was just like whoever makes a mistake is going to be pretty gutted, because that could potentially just lose the game for you in any moment, kind of thing. And so that's kind of how I looked at the game when I was watching it as well. Um, and it was both of those games were actually really really good. Like I really liked how the talent level of that too, and like I think that's what people are starting to catch on now. Like I've been saying this ever since I started, only, and that's the reason why I started. Is just like how much talent we have in New Zealand, and how close it is to Mitre 10 Cup talent level as well. And I think people are starting to see that as well, and sort of jump on board with that same idea and that same belief and how much good players that we have. And because we have so many good players, we only have so many limited spots as well, and that's kind of the other problem as well. But that's not a first team problem; that's a New Zealand rugby problem. Um, but Wellington was the other game that um, that had games on. Um, and I think uh, it's not a secret, like I guess rugby in Wellington, in the region, Wellington region, is suffering. It is suffering, and that's not a. I'm not being disrespectful at all. Like people in Wellington also see that, and they also know that that is going on, and they also know that um, there has to be a way that they can fix it, because the gaps are getting too big between the teams. I mean, like, look at Silverstream beating Tower 64-7, Scots beating St. Bernard's, who are actually a good team in that competition. Scots just have finally ramped it up, and they won 73-14. And even St. Pat's Town, they beat Rongotai 62-7. Now, 62-7 for Rongotai is not a fair comparison of those two teams. That 62-7 sounds like to me, after seeing Rongotai this whole year and reading about them a lot this whole year, that to me sounds like Rongotai just gave up on the year, because they are not that bad. They are not even close to 62-7 bad against St. Pat's Town. No, this is just what I think. What if that's what it is? And I mean, the kids may go, "No, that's not what it is. We just had a bad game," and blah blah blah. To me, if you look at all their score lines and then you read up on the teams and how they've been going this year and how they've played, to me, 62-7 is not that same reflection. So I that's where I just think to myself, I was like, well, it's this deep into the year. That to me sounds like Rongotai kind of just gave up, or like not the whole team, but there's like some guys on the team that are just like, so I'm just not trying as hard as I was in the first and second game of the season, where things were hopeful and all that kind of stuff as well. And so I don't know, I just kind of have that feeling with that team, but at the same time, as a whole, that competition has to be there has to be something done within that competition to keep that. Well, maybe I can't really say keep that because I think the Wellington competition has always been pretty much a 4 team competition, maybe 5 team. Because I mean, Silverstream Town, Silverstream Town, Wellington College, and Rongotai for the longest time were the only really forward strong teams. Then Scott started to change their program and they came into it, and then Rongotai fell off. And then now, right now, Wellington College has been the one that's started to fall off. And then it looks like Rongotai has started kind of doing the same thing as well, but St. Bernard's is coming up. But I mean, like if I was in that competition, I would start looking at it as like, well, they always got to need a top four, and if Silverstream and Town are going to be the only ones that are really, and Scots are really going to be the only ones performing, and there's that one spot in the four, it's like, yeah, why didn't I have a go at it? Because like if you think about it, like Scots, Wellington College only just beat Awatere 38-33. Why did Upper only just beat Mana College 33-23? And you still got St. Brendan's and Tower. So, like, if I was at fourth team and I'm like, well, if Rongotai is struggling and Wellington is struggling, then why not my team? I know Mana's building up a rugby program now with a lot of young guys this year who can come back next year and also the year after. And that's setting a stage for a strong rugby presence there in Wellington to me, which is really open. Now, if Mana lift up that rugby program that they have, you're going to see boys from Bishop Viard want to go there. You're going to see boys from Awatere want to go there. You want to see boys from Porirua College want to go there. And then that becomes the stable in Porirua as the rugby school. And to me, I think you would want all your strong rugby players to want to stay in Porirua because most of them are going to Scots College on scholarships, and most of them are going to some of them are going down to Silverstream. Some used to go down to Town, and that like I was told once, maybe a few years back, and said if you go to the bus station at in Porirua in the mornings, you're going to see a whole bunch of kids in a whole bunch of different uniforms that are not part of Porirua, and they're all busing to their schools, and which are pretty much in the city or going out to Scots or wherever they're going to on scholarship. So if Mana College can develop that, then they become the stronghold of rugby. Even kids from Tower College will probably just skip over and just be like, yeah, I'll just use my auntie's address and go to Mana College if it means that I go to a better rugby program. And Mana College has always been, to me, like in my mind, has always kind of been a basketball school. Only because I know a lot of Mormons and a lot of Mormon friends that are from Porirua, and I know that a lot of them used to go and play basketball there. So basketball program was pretty decent there because as Mormons, that's all we do most of the time is play basketball for everything that we, all the activities we want to do. And so like I think that if Mana sort this out and build strong within the next few years and then sort of start looking at the younger players from maybe those other schools and going, well, if you really want a strong rugby program, leave your school and come to ours because we've already built something here that's going to be pretty strong if we keep feeding into this Porirua school. And like, because where's Mana College? Like, is that in Tito? No, it's not. Is it in Tito Bay or Porirua East? I can't remember. But that's just one of those schools. If they build it, they're gonna have. If they build it, not if they build it, they will come. If they build it, Scots is gonna have a problem. St. Pat's Town is gonna have a problem, and Silverstream is gonna have a problem if they establish this strong team here in Mana College. And if this happens, I'm telling all you boys from Porirua that are rugby based, want to be part of a program that's really good, and you want to stay home, go to Mana College if that's the case. If you want to go to a strong school, and because I know, and I've talked to some of these boys, is that they don't really want to leave Porirua. But because the scholarships are there and there's openings there and they've been asked to go there, then they'll just leave. But if there's a rugby program there that is good enough for them to stay and also be known and recognized. And that's kind of where I come into it, where I like to talk about kids from all over the country. That's a pretty good place to go to. But first, Mana College has to really develop that side, really have things in place, and this is where I think guys like um, Tamati Allison will be really. Him and his brother will be really good if they really put some stuff back into the place, because I know that the hard out Porirua fellas, and then also Perinara, if he went back there and helped Mana College out, because that's where he's from, is from Mana College as well. And he's one of those boys that just didn't want to leave. And I heard when he was at school, he had offers to pretty much go wherever he wanted to go, and he just goes, "Nah, I'll just stay here." And so, like, if they have those boys literally come back all the time and help the players develop, and Tamati's a really good guy. Like, I've met him once before and sat down with him and sort of had a chit chat about stuff, and even what he's pushing is real good. And so, like, if he was able to put a lot back into it with the help of his brother as well as other guys that he knows and TJ Perinara, I think they might have a program there that is going to be strong in the long run, stronger in the long run. And I think the Wellington competition needs something like that, because um, everybody else is struggling. Every other school is struggling. The numbers sort of in Wellington have gone down as well, and so um, I think that they're going to need to do something real quick before it gets boring and stale, um, without a lot of teams really honestly competing against Silverstream. Because to me, Silverstream is probably the most consistent out of all of those schools. Um, and I mean consistent from under 14s all the way through, and then St. Pat's Town is probably close behind that, but I still think that they're behind Silverstream in that matter. And then Scots College as well is probably the one that's behind that, or not too strong in the lower grades, but once it gets to first 15, they're pretty solid in what they bring to the table. And so um, I hope that they fix that up, and I hope that they get able to get sort of other teams uplifted in the area, because I mean, that's what you need in such a big city like that. You think there'd be a lot more better teams for the region, sort of like the Wellington region. Um, but the other schools like Upper Hutt, like I've talked about Upper Hutt a lot. They've got a really good team this year, and a lot of good young guys coming back next year. And I have a feeling that they're going to be up in that Premier One division, or whatever that stage is. That they'll be in the top one next year. Um, those boys will just have to stick together. They'll have to stick together, train together, have that belief, and then and not play as the small school, play as the up and coming school, because I think that's what they're going to be next year. There were other games as well, like Whanganui Collegiate. They beat Hatupolda 38-14, and Hatupolda and Mana College both played two games. And Whanganui Collegiate all played two games this past week. Whanganui Collegiate played Francis Douglas and beat them 67-0. And Mana College lost to Hatupolda 23-7, which I was kind of surprised. I thought Mana College would have beaten Hatupolda, um, but it was I mean, I guess they pulled it out, and like this, just one of those things where some teams are just not used to um, keeping that intensity to play every single game. Like, it's the hardest. I think that's like maybe like one of the biggest differences between um, the big schools and the big schools that are in strong competition to sort of smaller schools. And I'm not just talking talent. I'm talking about that intensity to keep it focused on playing your best every single game. Big teams usually they don't have rests, and sometimes it becomes brutal because sometimes they can't help it. When they win, they win by a lot, and they try and win by a lot too. And it's not about I want to embarrass these guys. Sometimes they just don't know how to turn it off. And so they just keep stacking on the points because that's just what they're used to. They're used to competing every single ball. And then sometimes you get smaller schools that don't know how to treat a game like that because the stakes are not always on the line every single game. Whereas if you had someone like Hamilton Boys, they don't ever want to lose. They don't ever want to have a break. They could play someone like Te Aomuru or Melville High School or someone small like that, and they would try and demolish them because that's just what they're used to. They're just used to playing like that. They would not take any team for granted and go, it's just Melville High School. They will go, we need to keep to our structures, focus on our game plans, take care of our core roles, make sure we play at pace with fitness, and then that's how they treat the team. They don't say, this is Melville High School, let's check on our third 15. They'll say, we're the first 15, they're the first 15, and we're going to play them like the first 15. And they'll just look at them like your Hastings boys, your Napier, your, Auckland Grammar. They'll play them like that. And sometimes first 15s just can't turn it off sometimes. And sometimes those players are in that mindset every single time. And to me, that is the big difference between those kind of players and then players that come from smaller schools where rugby teams are not so important to that school or so important to to the boys that's kind of the big difference. Whereas Mana College may not be, even though they're building a program, they may not be at that stage yet where every single time is game time. Every single time is a do or die situation. We have to win this game. Even if it's just like a preseason game, most big schools are like, no, it's not preseason. It's like, I still want to win. The competitiveness is just different. It's just different. And then that's kind of where I have this that's where I have this sort of soft spot for the best players that have a goal at being a professional rugby player in smaller teams that don't have the same kind of mindset. Because that kid is different from all the other kids in that team, and pretty much all the other kids in the team know that that guy is way out of our league. If he leaves, he leaves. That's understandable, kind of thing. And so that's where I believe in kids that want to go to bigger schools and bigger programs because their mindset is the same as themselves, and it's just different from his teammates and guys that he grew up with. And like true friends, they won't like flipping stick it to you all the time. They're like, nah, yeah, he's way better than all of us. I don't know what he's doing here. If he gets a scholarship, he should go. And that's kind of how it is with all these guys. And then the big differences between big schools and small schools and the mentality when they take the field. But and Whanganui Collegiate's getting like that too, which is pretty cool because I like the program that they're bringing up there, and the players that they're starting to bring through now. And Whanganui Collegiate is going to be a really good school next year too because they got a bunch of young guys coming back. If Harry Godfrey comes back as well, and that's if he comes back as well, with Sean O'Reilly in the back line, and then they still got Waka will be back as well. Um, sorry, I'll call him O'Reilly. Sorry, like Bill O'Reilly. Sean O'Leary, and then it'll be Harry Godfrey. If he's still there, Waka's still going to be there. Tiana Prophet and Thomas Pease, and also Josefa as well is going to be there too. Namosi Malua is his last name. Let me check back on that. I think that's what his last name is. But those guys are all going to be back. And Conrad Newland, who is a year 11 prop, who I love this whole year and just the way that he's played. He's going to be back too. And I think Adam Beard, I think is his name. He's going to be back too at hooker, which is going to be really cool for them. I'm not too sure if Logan King is going to be back. I've got to check on that and see how old he actually is. Maybe I should check. And Harvey Meyer is going to probably be another one that will be back. That they would have to find a place to fit in there because he's such a good player. Oh, Luke Myers is the other one, the fullback. He'll be back at school too. Let me check this. Yeah, yeah. I think I got it right. Yeah, so that'll be another strong program. So next week we're going to be looking forward to. Oh, sorry. Uh, the Waikato competition, my competition here. Uh, Tokoroa beat Tokoroa High School beat Forest View High School 26-19, which is like way different from what their last game was, where they just blew them out. But that was I saw a lot of snippets from that. That was a real cool game to watch. Even the Te Awamutu and Cambridge one, where Cambridge won 14-10 over Te Awamutu College. I watched the live stream that they did on that too. I think they played in Hotapu, I think it was. And then Meta to Fraser High School. Fraser High School's done really good this year. Um, and they seem to be getting a lot better too, which is great. Which is pretty cool for a school like Fraser High School. And if you know basketball, Fraser High School is a basketball school. It's not a rugby school at all. And so what they're doing now and how whatever the coaching staff is doing there, it's bloody doing great. And then hopefully they bring out some rep players out of those schools, and then yeah. Um, Next week's games with the finals. Hamilton Boys and Rotorua is going to be interesting, and Stack and Christchurch Boys is going to be an interesting one as well. Um, I'm not too sure what's. Let me look this up. What's happening with the Wellington games? Um, but the Super 8 final is going to be. Uh, I don't know. It's going to be hard to beat Hamilton Boys. But Hamilton Boys is lucky, right? Like they're so lucky they didn't. They're so lucky they didn't lose that game against Napier Boys, and getting a red card early on is such a hard thing to overcome. But Napier Boys were they did way better than what I thought, and it was only even till right towards the end that Hamilton Boys, bloody got it together and then controlled that game. Um, oh yeah, so the Silverstream one, yeah, Silverstream and Scots will be the finals. Just making sure that that's what it was, and that's always on a Sunday. Um, and I think that one's going to be close too. I think that one's going to be a lot closer, and it's probably going to be like um, the game that they played just last week. I think it was. It's going to be that close as well. I don't think it's going to be a big score. Um, but like I was saying before the last week, I said that Scots to me got more out of that game than what Silverstream did. Now Silverstream, I think, have to maybe change some stuff up, plan different attacks, um, because it's so easy to go to someone like Riley just because of how good he is. Um, Maybe Luke Wormsley needs to push something a bit, um, and maybe get Peter Larkai some more ball. Maybe get Mitchell Southall in there a bit more. Maybe have his front rowers running a bit more game, but um, I would rather set up for Riley to not to create the space, but to put him into space and then have him destroy the next level of defense, and then get Riley to make those decisions um, after he breaks the line, after you put him through a gap to break the line, and then get him to play on after that. But I think that those other guys like Luke Wormsley and that have to maybe um, not so much not rely on him so much to do it, but to give him some space so that he's the one that can actually worry about what happens after instead of trying to sort of do everything at the same time. I mean, like Junior Polo, who's that second five. Oh, TJ Clark's the other kid. Sorry, TJ Clark at first five. He's the one that I was thinking of. Um, Maybe he needs to do a little bit more, because even Lockie Forbes coming into the line, he would be another guy that I'd probably bring in a lot from fullback to maybe change the look of the attack, and maybe use Riley as the dummy. Maybe do like a skip past the center back inside to Lockie, and then have him run on these different angles just to throw Scott's off a bit. Because I have a feeling that Scots have got something, and they're playing so well right now, Scots, and um, I think that they've been getting ready for the Silverstream game. And Orion Kalolo's been playing really good. Yeti Campbell's been playing really good. Um, Getting guys like Sam Halaholo to Halahilo. I said Halaholo like the guys from Max. Yeah, I say the names wrong sometimes because there's so many boys that I've remembered, not even just from this year, but from like over the years as well. Um, but yeah, even John T. Dominic's probably really going to be the guy that I would rely on a lot in the forwards. Sione Halahilo, I call him Sam too. Sorry, bro. Sione Halahilo. Um, Hala, am I messing up like hard up? Halalilo. Sorry, bro. Anyways, yeah, I think that they've got a really um, Scots have really. I think. Oh yeah, because I think Scots has got it, but also because Eric Lawson got injured too in that first Silverstream game a few weeks back, so he's not going to be there. And then it depends what kind of cover they have for him, because that's a pretty big loss. And I really like the way that Eric Lawson plays too. Um, yeah, so that's going to be interesting. That's three. That's three really good games. Like I like those three games. Those are really good games. Um, so on some of my picks, right? Um, and I'll start with um, guys from the second team that I picked. And I even mentioned too that Josh Bartlett hasn't had the best year, but I think I selected him knowing on what he can do. And when he is on, he is so effective in what he does, just from ball carrying to cleaning out to all the extra stuff that he does. To me, I think that he's still one of the best props in the country right now. Um, Raymond Tuputupu is a young year 13, I think. Got to check that one up, but I think he's a young year 13. And if he comes back next year as well, um, he's gonna be probably the one of the front runners with um, Junior Tulutau, and then even I think it's Adam. What's his name? Adam Falolo from Manurewa, who's like a really another good hooker as well. Um, I think Sean Ralph is also from Hamilton Boys, is also a young year 13, I think it is. Um, yeah, Adam Fa'alolo is the other one from Manurewa. But if Raymond comes back as well, like he's gonna, I think he might be the front runner. But um, I think his performance has been real consistent throughout this whole year, throughout this whole season this year, and he came back ready, came back in really good shape, and that's what was more impressive to me as well. Was how his intensity never dropped throughout games. He always kind of kept that same energy and went at everything at the same pace, and really put himself into a lot of positions where he could be effective, especially in around the edges of the rucks and defending on the line. He was real strong and driving his legs back. Driving his legs, things that sometimes a lot of players, especially in first team rugby, some kids are not as mechanical in the way that they um, perform in different situations. So, like um, most guys defending their line when guys are picking off the back of the rucks as one-off runners, a lot of guys would drop their weight down on top or sort of drop their bodies to sort of block the runner rather than tackle and push them back. Whereas to me, Raymond holds them and then drives them back and tries to push them back instead of just stops their momentum. To me, those are like big differences in the way that you approach the game, because even with professionals in Mitre 10, like you always see them, they may not be successful in that, but that's always their intention, is to push them back, not to just stop the momentum right there and then. And to me, that's what Raymond kind of does. Haruto Takahashi is kind of the same as well, but um, what I noticed about him this year to what he was doing last year is that a lot of the stuff he was doing last year to me was like all background work. Whereas right now he plays up front, he plays out in the open. He's a really good communicator in terms of uh, knowing what the game plan is and then directing who's getting the ball or who's getting the ball from him or who he's offloading to or setting up, and then he just gets right back into behind it and takes whatever crap that people give to him as well, like the extra hit and bumps, and then he just gets in and does the work. That's something that he wasn't doing last year, even though he was this big menacing. He's got a lot of mongrel as well, and I think it shows a lot this year than what it did last year. Even though I was real impressed with him last year in terms of even when he used to play under 16s too. Like when I first saw him for the first time, I was like, oh shoot, he's like that. But this year he's actually got it in check and he knows how to control it and distribute it. Rowan Slater was another guy that I thought upped his game real big from last year to this year, and I was like even more impressed with um, how he played at blindside. I think there was one mistake that I saw um, on the side where he's usually good getting out of the blocks off the side of the scrum, advancing forward, not to the side, but advances forward with cutting off play and sort of getting into the passing lane kind of thing. But there was one where he didn't. I think it was the Rotorua game where I think it was just so fast that he didn't anticipate it. It was sort of like an engage, the ball rolled back, and then Tama just took off. Tama Fara Aurere. And that's when he was playing at number 8, and he just took off, and he ended up scoring a try. And I think it was just one of those things that where you kind of probably new to the experience of having that situation, new to that situation. That's what it is. He's new to that situation, just didn't know how quick that ball was coming out, and he just got caught. And that's probably like the only mistake that I really saw him do from a blind side position. But I mean, I chose him at lock, and I thought he does great as well. Harrison Morton was the other guy who is also like, I think, and I had him early in my New Zealand prospects because that's what I thought of him last year when I saw him for under 18s Otago, and also 2 games or 3 games that I saw for John McGlashan last year, but I actually think that he's going to be a really good under 20s, under 19s, under 20s player. I think he's going to be maybe one that we should watch out for, who might blow up really quick as a younger player coming through the ranks. But he just does the dirty stuff, all the hard type 5 stuff. He just does it. He does all that kind of stuff, and he's really good. Um, really good in lineouts. I think it takes, and I think for some of these bigger locks, you're going to have some impressively strong props right now in high school that can get them up faster. They can get them up there, but it's being quick to get up there, and so sometimes they're not used as much. But once he gets into club rugby and under 19s, I think you'd see like a really different player in Harrison Morton, and even injuries on early on in the year. Stumbled out a little bit, and then the team wasn't having didn't have a really good year this year, and only really caught on fire at the end, coming towards the end of the season. So that's why he's in the second team and not in the first. But Shay Clark was another one that I had as year 12. I still haven't. I still think that if New Zealand secondary schools was picked as a full squad of like 30, which is what they usually choose between 30 and 32, something like that. I think he would be included into that top team. Just as sheer athleticism as a big guy, his presence at kickoff time is not hard to see why he's that good in those situations, because he's 6'5", 6'6". He's really fast, pretty explosive as well. And then having him sit out on the edge as well, and then creating opportunities for him to get into those mismatches where he can really dominate and be a threat into scoring pretty much all the time. That's kind of like where you want him to be. That's kind of the situation that you want him to be in. And like for the most part of this year, what they played, he was doing that. And even last year, like, which was more of a, well, I was talking to a guy about one of the kids about this too, and he was telling me, he's like, why do you think he's that good? I was thinking, well, because they said to me, and there's a big difference here between what you think that player should be doing to what that player's role is in the team. There's big differences between that. And so the kid was telling me, he goes, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do that, he doesn't this. And I was like, yeah, but he may not be instructed by his coaches to do that stuff, because they want him to play out on the edge. They want him to have that, and they have guys that can do that stuff and that are more effective on the edge. Why would you have someone like that who's in the middle getting stuck there when you have a less athletic guy stuck out on the edge, and he gets caught out there? And when he gets caught in a one-on-one, he's not fast enough. He may be strong enough, but he's not quick enough to get out there, and he may not have the ball skills to pass it. All that kind of stuff matters. And that's kind of what Shay Clark does and what he gives. And the biggest difference is between how a guy is asked to play within his team to what he can actually do. If you just let him, sort of freestyle his game, yeah, you'd probably see him try and get in the middle of everything and, bloody clean out bodies and put on massive hits on big guys, because I know Shay likes doing that kind of stuff. He did that as a year 10 and a year 11. Like, he was really in the middle of that, and he likes that physical confrontation against bigger guys as well, or older guys. And so that's what I think he brings in. And like I said, like if this was a normal situation, I think he would be in New Zealand secondary schools. Fletcher Anderson has done everything that you wanted to do, and playing from number 8, I still think he's kind of a number 7. Because like when I saw him in the Crusaders, I actually thought, oh, maybe he is a 7, because that's what he played last year in the under 18 Crusaders. He came from side. I was like, oh, maybe that's what it is, and he's probably a lot better at that. Elijah Crosswell is the other one where his run game is really good, and just the work ethic that he has around the field, and even as that link for the backs as well, because he He's able to take a lot of hits, but also be controlled at the same time. Doesn't make many mistakes at all, and he just seems to be one of those guys that gets around the ball and then he makes something work. Whether it is taking that extra hit and giving a pass, or drawing and passing, or you know, getting over the ball fast, things like that. He's just been one of those kind of players, and it was like, to me, it was like a bit of a toss up with George Methvin as well, of who I liked in that position, and who would offer, if I was making this team, who would offer me more. George's height to me is something that I like a lot, because in terms of jumping options, in terms of physical mismatches, in terms of, because I think their run games are kind of similar. Elijah may do a lot more work around the rucks, where George may hang out around first five, second five a little bit. Maybe inside, maybe about inside the center, having that sort of link with him. But his run game is more impressive, getting out there and just drawing that attention to come. And that's kind of why I went with George rather than Elijah. But to me, those two are very, very similar in gameplay. Adam Lennox is another one that is from Whanganui Collegiate, who is sort of under the radar kind of thing, but is so fast and so quick out of the back of the rucks and even scrums and stuff, that he poses a real threat. Even when he plays, normally he sort of plays to the line and draws defenders in, and sort of plays that sort of he plays that cheeky role of, I'm just going to test you and see when you're going to bite on this, because when you don't bite on the tackle with him stepping to the line, he'll take off, and he makes so many breaks that way. And it's just something that I really liked and admired, because to me that he was willing to test it. And I kind of watched from afar with him and Harry Godfrey, and the way that they played for Whanganui Collegiate. And one thing that I look at is I always look at the opposition and who they're playing, and because they were tearing up other teams, in terms of the competition, they were playing on the lower side of the competition in the south of the CNI competition, not in the north. If they were beating St. John's the way that they were beating those other teams, if they were beating St. Peter's and even St. Paul's and Wesley the same way, I think it would have just been more impressive. But because they were doing it to like Rathgill and St. John's and St. John's Hastings and Lindisfarne, and to me it wasn't really convincing until they did it to fielding. And even though in preseason they had really solid games against Palmy boys and New Plymouth boys, I still was a bit reluctant into really pushing them up forward until sort of like until they really proven it with the fielding game, the St. Peter's school game, and then fielding again. Rewatching the games from Palmy and New Plymouth boys as well. That one-on-one with Jack Parker in New Plymouth was a really good one as well, with Harry Godfrey in that, and Adam was solid in that game too. But that's why I like Adam Lennox there. Taha Kimura from Hamilton Boys as a year 12. It's kind of like it's obvious, I think, and like even though Noah Hotham is that good at halfback, Taha brings a lot to it as well. I think he's got to work on his kicking game in terms of not just like kicking for goal, because he had a bad year this year. Like last year he was all right. I don't know really why, but he doesn't seem to be kicking as well this year. Last year it was all good. Like there wasn't really a worry, but to me he relies a lot on his running game, which, like, why wouldn't you when you just turn to your strengths? But I think next year, maybe over the summer, he's got to work on those little kicking options, and that's where I kind of like Dawson Smith from St. Peter's, Cambridge, who to me has that game. Um, he has the passing game and the kicking game and the structure, and he has a running game as well. But that's where I think Dawson does better than Taha, is that he has a kicking game um, that he knows how to control, and he knows when and how to use it. And that's why I kind of like that matchup with or that combination of Dawson Smith and Quinlan Tupou, is because Quinlan is kind of the same, where he's kind of a big stocky first five. Quinlan doesn't only just, and people always talk to me about him and they go, why do you like him so much? I said, well, if you just single him out and watch just his game himself, you kind of look at him and you go, well, he's that big and strong, why does he just run through them? It's like, well, that's like just telling LeBron James to just dunk every time. It's like, where that's not realistic. Quinlan, on the other hand, knows he can run through players, but that's not always the best thing for your team. That's like a selfish thing. Like, watch me just run into these guys and bump them off. And I was like, yeah, but we've got to overlap outside. Why would you just run it? And Quinlan, to me, is that kind of guy where he's just like, I can run through this guy, but if I show him I'm going to run, have him sort of step up, and then he's got enough timing to either put in a little grubber kick, skip pass, put just a little up and over, and then he relies on guys like Justin and Blake and that to sort of push up. And he always has like guys like Cash Farmer and that, and even George Meyer. He will use everybody. He doesn't just play the game just for himself. And that's what I like about Quinlan Tupou, and why I have him in my top team opposed to the second one, is that he's always going to do what's best for what the situation is. And that's how I think that we should play all the time, is that I know that you can run him over. So what? That's not what's needed in this situation. Because they're not here to entertain you. They're really here to win the game. Now, meaning that I take this hit and give this little pop pass, which is a better option than me trying to run it, I'll take the hit. And Tupou's kind of like that. It was like, with Quinlan, I'd be like, yeah, I'll take the hit, because I know I can handle this hit, and make sure I give this pass off, make sure I get it to where it is. And they scored a lot of tries just based off what little things that he was doing. Even their pressures is like, Dawson will do little clicks here to the right side, and then the ball come out to Quinlan, and he'll just be putting it just over the top. You see Blake always coming, just firing up, and that's having someone like Blake who's that fast and that explosive, moving up on a kick that you know that is coming your way, and you have to turn around and go, holy crap, how fast is Blake coming? Because if I grab onto this ball, I'm going to get smoked. That's kind of what Quinlan is proposing there. Is just it's like, nah, I can run through it, but I'm going to make you turn around and sort of imagine what's coming behind you. And then they can push up on defense. He's really solid in defense as well. So him and Dawson, to me, and that combination of first five, second five, was always to me about creativity, and then and mixing it up. They never ever just played the same repetitive rhythm of the game. They always switched it up and changed it up, and that's kind of what I liked about them. And I think where Quinlan would be able to do that in the top side, in the first team that I got. Dawson may even end up, I was talking to another guy, Dawson may even end up as like a second five, because he's so big. He's big as well. Like, he's a really solid kid who looks like he can put on a lot of muscle. Orion Kalolo is kind of like that too, where Orion's is like a first five in a center body. Like, he's so muscly that he can get away with it, but he's also got the creative skills too. That's why I have Taha and Orion at first five and second five, is that Orion's just got those skills as well. He's big and strong but fast, but he's also creative and has all those skill sets as well. Whihi Whanganofo from Grammar, was another kid that I was contemplating out of him, Quinlan, and who was it? It was either going to be Mecca. It was out of Mecca Springer, Quinlan Tupou, and then Fihi Whanganofo. And Mecca's from Waimea College. Those were kind of the three that I was humming the hiring about and pushing around and seeing, because I was pretty comfortable with uh, Lafo Ching, and then from Palmy Boys, and then Riley Higgins at center. But then there was those other guys that I wasn't quite sure. I was like, well, like who would be the best that I would want and that I would rely on, and I thought Maka would be um, that way to give a different dynamic if it becomes that way, and where Fihi is kind of the same as Lafo, but where they're just big, powerful, running guys and play heavy defense as well. And I think Fihi may be the better defender out of all of them. Riley's pretty good as well. Um, Quinlan as well is okay, but I think Fihi might be the better defender out of all of them. Um, Oliver Foot is another one that I think maybe should have been in that first team if I had space. But him at fullback, just like I said, and the thing is that he plays it like touch, and he kind of picks out gaps and stuff like at touch, and like he's playing touch. Jaden Stock and also Ishi Salmaki is another one. Um, just dynamic, just dynamic ball runners, and they use like every opportunity to like gain ground is kind of like their thing. They have like a confidence about themselves that they know that they can bite off 10 meters at a time if they wanted to, kind of thing. And I like that presence. And then, I mean, Issy is just so big and strong as well. I think if you give him someone like Fihi or Orion, giving him a lot more ball and space and putting him on a one-on-one with a winger or a fullback that's coming up into the line, I think he kind of wins that almost every single time. And he'll sort of physically dominate you, and then on the other side, Jaden's more of the he'll put a grubber around you, then run around you, then collect it again, or chip it over the top, and all that kind of stuff, and then even put on a lot of footwork to get around fullbacks, stuff like that. That's what I like about Jaden and the way that he plays. Nasser Tato was another one that I thought was kind of. I don't know why he wasn't added as he didn't make that under 18 Hurricanes, which to me I don't know why. I'm not too sure why that is, because I actually thought that he's been playing really good and really solid. Um, Yafeta is the other one. Ma'a, him and Mitch Curran probably from both from Napier boys. Um, because Yafeta I heard wasn't gonna stay in school. Um, but glad he came back. I'm glad that he came back, and I'm glad that he played. And he's still at the top of his game. Maybe lost a little bit of focus, but I know what he can do. I know how dominant he can be, and being able to play hooker and prop. And Mitch has probably had like the best. Like I think if there was like a most improved player, he would probably be one of the guys that I looked at for most improved from last year to this year, even over like Rowan Slater and Elijah Croswell, like guys like that. I think Mitch probably had the biggest impact like that. Curtis Palmer. I mean, if you've watched Curtis Palmer, he just plays everything at 100% and just is so physically dominating with the ball in hand, even tackles. Um, a pretty fit player for someone that you think that is not that fit and mobile, and he pretty much answers all those things anyway with the way that he runs and the effect that he has on the game. Dominic Ropiti from Scots College. I hope he comes back next year because he's only a young year 13. Um, if he comes back, he'll be one of the top players next year in my mind as well, and probably an easy selection for New Zealand secondary schools next year. Sam Helling is another one from Cowston Boys who's at halfback. There were other few halfbacks that I was thinking of too, but then I thought, I kind of like the way that he plays the game and the speed that he plays with and the aggressive nature that he plays the game at too as halfback for Cowston Boys. Um, Obviously, I have Dawson Smith. Andrew Hayward was another guy that from Hastings Boys um, who I think is probably one of the most physical guys that are out there. One of the most physical guys with ball in hand. Real skillful player too. And then Jeremiah Ussie, who I had on as like my 24 and 25 pick. Jeremiah, and I don't know if he's going to league because I was told that he might go to league, and as a year 12, and he's got I think he's going to be a real big deal next year, and he's kind of like the one that the reason why that I put AJ Faleafunga into fullback, even though he's a first five, is that when you watch those guys play, AJ always falls back on defense, and then. Um, and then Jeremiah will come up to first five. When the ball goes back, he comes up and attacks, and it's like they count on the turnover. He stays in first five, and then Jeremiah comes up into the attack then. And it's kind of the way that they work it then. And because, for one, I think AJ's attacking is a bit different as well as his kicking game. If it needed, he knows how to find the ground in the backfield as well when he sort of just scopes the field when the ball's kicked down to him. And then he has the ability and footwork to also um, return a ball with a bit more interest and then also be able to break some tackles and get into a safe position where his support is there. And so I kind of looked at that and I thought, well, maybe he is a guy that you'd probably want there to have those extra kind of skills. Because I kind of saw him. I was like, well, if I had him, Tavita Hernandez Schuster from Palmy Boys, as well as Ethan Martin from Napier Boys, and then what kind of connection those three players can make, even just from an attacking base, I thought go to one side of the field, you get this like electric runner who can link up with AJ and Ethan Martin, and then you have this big explosive winger in Tavita who can take that physical hit and runs really good lines. And so I thought those two things to me on both sides work out in terms of an attack if you're gonna attack that way. And AJ being able to create that and be the playmaker of that with those two people as options, I thought would be like a massive thing to watch. Um, Luffel and Riley in my second five in center, I think is a really solid pick. Just in the way that both, I mean, apart from Luffel's like, just, I think like seeing him smash people is the easy thing about him, but people forget about his footwork game in terms of um, drawing people away to create little gaps and angles for his playmakers to run. The reason why Tavita does have a lot of running ground is because most of the time everyone's concentrated on Luffel, and then which leaves Tavita open to break that one arm reaching tackle from the winger that's trying to mark Luffel at the same time as Tavita, and then Tavita also running those angles and then just brute strength and physicality over fullbacks, most fullbacks, and just runs through. And so like Luffel does a lot more than just the cool stuff that you can see as highlights. Um, Jack Parker to me is is exactly what a first five should be. I don't think anyone has a better kicking game than he does right now. Um, I think he runs a more he runs a better game managing role than anybody else in first five in New Zealand right now, and he also takes on the line a lot. He doesn't look like a guy that can, but he actually does. He can take the line on a lot just by himself and what he does, and so um, that's why I have him there from Jack Parker from New Plymouth, and he's going to be going down to Crusaders. Sad for me, but because like I love my Chiefs, but to me, I think that's a better place for him to go anyway. Um, I think he made the right choice in that. Noah Hotham, obviously at halfback, and I don't know, like to me, he's just the heart and soul of that team, and the reason why they're up by so much in terms of the rankings as well as in every single game they pretty much play. He just controls everything. I talked about George Methan before, and it's just running game and just the way that he puts himself in a position to sort of make breaks, things like that. I think Tarama Ruben is pretty is one of the biggest runners that we have, most physical, dominant, doesn't take any crap from anybody on the field, and he plays and he leads that same with that same kind of attitude, and I like that a lot because, and I like when I watch him on the field, he doesn't accept guys that back off. Even from his teammates, he doesn't accept that stuff, and he doesn't talk to them like um, he doesn't beat around the bush with it. He just tells them, harden up. Let's get up there. Let's be physical. Let's be in their face. Let's be, and I like that kind of way. Like I mean, that's more of like an old school thing, I guess. But I mean, I like guys like that. I like guys that take that accountability, and he knows that when they're getting out muscled, and he steps up and he sort of gets them in there to do that. And then Jordan Hutchings, who's from Rotorua Boys from Dargaville, um, I'm. It's hard too, right? Because I kind of wish why didn't you come last year? But even this year, him coming down was huge for him. And to me, he wouldn't be getting that recognition if he was up there. I knew about him 2 years ago from someone that told me about him from Northland. I didn't take that much notice of it. Last year I did, and I thought, oh shoot, this guy does have something, but I wasn't too sure how good he really was until this year. And I saw him, I was like, oh, this guy's actually a really big deal. And I kind of gutted that I didn't really promote him a lot last year, but um, I probably should have, and probably one that I missed. But this year, he pretty much showed everyone how good he was over the ball and how good he was around the field. And I think the only one that really, to me, that matches up with him, and it was kind of hard for me to um, decide which one was better, was Vivini. Um, Lasaqua was the other one, who I think Vivini is. I don't know who's better over the ball because both of them do that. Both of them are so strong over the ball, both fast to the ball, both really good runners as well. I think it's a toss up, and I don't know who would be better in there, but I just think right now Jordan is playing better. But I don't think it actually really drops off if you were to put Vivini in there anyway. I was kind of like the other thing when when I was looking at Daniel Dixon from Nelson is that he kind of has that same presence where he can play lock and blindside. Is the reason why I have him in there, and his ball skills um, out on the edge where he sometimes plays, he makes a very big difference in the way that in the way that things are played out when he's out there. He just makes a whole lot more different. He makes a whole lot more of a difference in um, most players would if they were to be out there as well. And so that's why I have him in the team there. I think Alan Craig is probably a given on why he's there, and obviously my number one player in the country. Jamie Hanna, even though he is light, to me that's just maybe more genetics. And when he gets there under 20s and under 19s, under 20s, he's pretty much probably going to jack up and be in the gym, and he's going to become this muscle man that we'll see. It would be like, yeah, we knew he was going to turn into something like that anyway. But even with him, like obviously he's a sevens player too, but he does really dominate and when he has ball in hand, and just the I guess the plays that he makes around the field, he does make it a lot easier. And even though he's light, he still does make a lot of tackles and is pretty effective in and around the rucks. Fabian Holland's the other one that I chose as a lock. Behind him is this Christchurch boys teammate as well. And um, even though Fabian hasn't been in the game that long, I I kind of see how good he is, and how fast he's come along just in the 2 years that he's sort of been here. Now, being 6'8", 6'9" does help, but I've seen a few 6'8", 6'9" that don't really work out, and that don't really, how do you say it, don't really become the player that you thought they were going to sort of be. And he is that kind of he is that kind of guy, and um, he's the guy that actually made it. He's the guy that actually is really dominant in what he does. Um, I think once he gets into, I don't even know if he's staying here in New Zealand. He might go back home. He might not be like Anton and stay here. He might go back to Holland um, and maybe pursue it there on a European side, or maybe go to, why not go to France? It's closer to home for him. But if he was to stay here, what is 100% going to be a problem for everybody real quickly. Once he gets with a proper locks coach that can give him that one-on-one time, as well as he starts figuring it out, he probably has a lot more upside than most of the guys in this team. Even um, including Alan Craig, who I think is going to be a pretty big deal. But I mean, like Christchurch boys have three. I mean, even Alex Yallop, who's another lock, who I don't know how tall he is. He looks like he's 6'7" as well. He looks like he is that tall. I don't know, because Fabian's so big, and then he makes Jamie kind of look small, as well as Alex as well. But I was thinking, well, if they're that small to him, I was thinking, oh shoot, like Alex has got to be something like 6'7", by the way that Fabian makes him look. But Alex is another one as well that I thought was a pretty sharp player. Um, just to explain the other one, so Mason Tupaya, I thought has been pretty obvious and maybe a really on form prop right now. Fino Halafi, whose selection was last year in New Zealand secondary school, got injured, wasn't able to do anything, but still physical, still effective, still explosive, hard guy to stop. Maybe needs to work on his throwing a little bit more, but I think he pretty much makes it up for in the other great stuff that he does on the field as well. Havila Molia is just himself, and that's just what he does. And he's just so big, so strong, so effective. Maybe needs to push himself all the way through the game, and because he's fit enough to, but he just needs to push himself. And I think just in this last game against St. Peter's was probably one of the better games that I've seen him play in terms of the determination factor of being in those situations, and pretty much won them the game. Actually, he won them the game, and that's why I like him so much, and where he's come from. He's just such a good player, and so I have him there. Um, I have Amini Tonga there at from Stack at hooker. Monu Moli, like, and I said this before, is just like I don't know who's really better. Like Monu might be the better one out of him, Mason, and Havila. But whoever you want to put in there, I don't think it changes that much. I just put the guys that were kind of um, on form and winning. Those two teams are winning. St. Peter's, St. Paul's, and Hamilton boys are winning. Marlborough boys pretty much is not winning. Has not had a really good season this year. But Monu has always stood out in every single game, and that's why he is obviously still there. Israel Otanuku was the guy from King's College that when I looked at everybody, because there was so many good props here in New Zealand, when I looked at everybody and I thought about the effect that they had on their teams, he was the guy that I looked at that I thought when he is not around, that team struggles. And so I thought the value of having someone like that and how much he can change it, and that's probably why he's the captain, but what he can do to change people's perspective, um, and how they see in the game just because of his presence is there must be a big tell on who he is, and so that's why I went with him. Joel Parry has played so good this whole year. Bit different. He's pretty different from how Noah plays, and I like kind of the fact that he's like that. And then I already talked about Quinlan. Talked about Macca and why I want him there. Macca has got a real broad skill set of talents from um, being able to play centre, fullback, wing. He can kick. He's got a kicking game downfield. He's got a really good running game. So fast, really physically strong as well, which I hope I could see more of. But he gets things done anyway, um, and that's why I had him in that team because of how just how well rounded he is and his many skill sets that he has. And then I talked about Harry Godfrey as well for Whanganui Collegiate too. And so I hope I went for everybody, but that was like my squad, my two squads, my 50 select that I did, and then we're just waiting for New Zealand to pick their ones and whoever it is. I hope. I mean, I'm going to go to the camps. Whether they're going to let me stay or let me hang around is like a different story. Um, I really just want to go there selfishly, I think. Selfishly because I go to these camps to learn myself. I go there to listen to coaches and listen to um, the different position coaches that they have. And then I bring a whole bunch of stuff that I learn and go, oh, that's why they play it that way, or that's why they choose to do the same thing like that all the time. Where we think it's not working, but they have a purpose for it. And I learn a lot of those things out of those things too. So out of all the little training runs that they have, and all the little drills that they do position wise, I take heaps of stuff from it. And so that's why I like going to these places. Also, I like to go and film them and then show everybody else, especially the younger guys who are year 11 and year 12, and go, so that they watch and go, I need to be a part of that, and that's my goal to make it to those camps, whether it's under 18s, regional teams like your Blues, Chiefs, Crusaders, Hurricanes, Highlanders camps, and they can see what that's like, and they want to be a part of that, or the extra goal that you make and just make New Zealand's and New Zealand Barbarians, and then I can show them visually this is what it's like to be here, and you should be able to, and you should set your goals for the next 2 years to try and get to this place. And that's why I want to be there, and hopefully management doesn't kick me out, or ask me not to be there, or all that kind of stuff. And if I'm lucky, if I'm lucky, they'll have me sitting on um, their meetings and their little coaches chats that they have. It's just the fly on the wall kind of thing. Like I don't want to add anything to it. I just want to listen and just learn from uh, things that they have to say, and yeah, just hopefully educate myself a little bit more and get my rugby IQ a little bit higher because I always like to learn different stuff about different sports. But these were my reasonings and why I chose the players that I chose. And the guys that I liked from this year and showed a lot of consistency and stuff. But um, this has actually been the longest one. And so I think I better go off. This is the Monday morning meeting. Herschel Fraud, High School Top 200. Peace. Take care.